The first item that we need to take care of is our agenda approval, and we need to make some changes. I know that I would like to see a form to act. We need to insert June into minute approval, so that it would read minutes of the June 22nd, 2021 regular meeting. And we need to add election of secretary to number 6, which is required per our establishing ordinance 155.12. So, does anybody have any other changes they'd like to see? Could I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Can I, as an alternate?
You're not an alternate, well, actually you are right now, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
No.
he's
We don't have a
appointed.
quorum.
He's appointed.
He's appointed. I mean, we could do this anyway. If you want to uncall your, I mean, I can swear him in before. This is all general stuff. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
It's fine. He's good.
Okay.
Which means
Make a
you didn't have
motion.
to, which means the agenda to have to be moved around, they're already members.
They were appointed. You're fine, because that's how the board appointed them.
Okay. Does anyone have any objections?
No.
Instead of a vote, we'll just do this by agreement? Okay. So then the roll call. Vicki Myers, here. Pete Pallas,
Here.
Greg Shue, not here. Wade Coleman,
Here.
Sylvia Pate,
Here.
John Kane,
Here.
Mark Francis.
Here.
Excellent. Okay, now we need to move on to swearing in of members by Heather, our town clerk. Regular members are Pete, Wade, and Sylvia, and alternates are John and Mark.
And if you want, we'll do the regular members separate and then the alternates separate, so they can, so whichever group you guys want to do first. You want to do the regulars? All right, come on forward for the regulars for me. If you come, the regular members come forward.
Ron, you got any film on the camera? Ron or I film here.
Okay, you guys get to raise your right hand and place your left hand on the Bible. And repeat after me, please. I state your name.
I, Greg Holden,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and maintain
I will support and maintain
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States,
and the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of North Carolina,
of North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
as a regular member
as a regular member
to the Planning and Zoning Board
of the Planning and Zoning Board
for the town of Holden Beach.
for the town of Holden Beach.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Just need all three of you to sign these for me, please.
You guys are next.
Yours and yours. And then if I could have the alternate members come forward, please.
We're gonna expect free sandwiches now. Every week.
That's your new restaurant, that's your restaurant.
Yours.
I know, I
Listen, I was gonna say-
that I'm recording, right? Free sandwiches. Okay. You get to raise your right hand, your left hand on the Bible, please.
Y'all lost the
I
palm
state your
tree
name.
during that storm last year.
Do solemnly swear that I will
Palm
support
tree
and
came
maintain
over and crushed one of mine.
the Constitution
It
and
was in the right
laws
way. Palm tree's in the right way.
of the United
Y'all,
States
you know where the line is? We can move.
of North Carolina,
It crushed about
not
50 tables.
inconsistent
It was
therewith,
in the right way. It was in the right way. It got
and
crushed.
that I will faithfully discharge
No, it wasn't mine. Listen, I lent that to you. That was not us.
You lit it to me?
Yeah, I lent that to you, so in case, you know, for the beautification and everything.
for the town of Holden
Damn, if that thing didn't come over that storm. Crushed that. It's funny, when I pulled up.
So what happened?
All I could say was,
I really wanted to not look at the paper because I know it, but then I know I've done it so many times, I'm like,
Ron Champion to come over and get it before I could call y'all.
Thanks. You
If
came,
you
got
guys,
it?
if you get an outside afterwards.
Thank you, Heather.
Have a good meeting.
Thanks, Hope.
Love ever.
Get out of this. palm tree.
I didn't even miss that palm tree. I remember that.
It's gone.
You didn't put it in
There's a stump there for you.
Okay, moving on to number 5. We have to elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. Are there nominations for the chair?
I
copy?
didn't get it, I didn't get that, the agenda, did I?
This is my notes. You want this one? I'll take that one.
Okay, cool.
We did some changes, but now we're down to basically here.
I would nominate that you continue as chair.
Okay, are there anybody else? Okay, so, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, I will serve another year as chair, but you need to know, this is my last year. I'm off the board in a year, okay? I've met my 6-year term. I've been on this thing since 14. So, I'm gone after this year, and somebody else needs to step up. But if anybody's interested, I'll help you, I'll train you, I'll whatever, okay? So think about it. We need a vice chair. Taking nominations?
I'll nominate Pete.
I'll second that nomination. You okay with that? Okay, are there any other nominations? All those in favor of Pete serving as our vice chair, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you. As a matter of order, with us being alternates, do we participate or just stay silent, or?
You
what do you look-
participate in the election of officers on our board.
Okay.
We're gonna have a little list of like planning and zoning tips, and I was gonna
Mhm.
explain that with you guys,
Okay.
how that all works. But I was gonna do it at the end.
Sure, okay, thanks.
We need a secretary. That's in our establishing ordinance, that we have to have a secretary, which is kind of different from some of our other boards. Who would like to do it, that there's no duties?
There's no duties?
What a deal.
Do you know of any duties?
There are no duties. Here's what it is.
I do all the
The reason we
secretary
left
duties.
it off is because the secretary used to do everything that Rhonda does, but when David came here, David recognized the state of North Carolina does not allow you to nominate a person to take minutes for the public. So that was a position that should have never been in there. That's the reason we left it off the agenda. We left it off the agenda because when David came here, his policies for the employees took that position.
Actually, though, if you look at I've got one of those books from School of Government, it says we have to have one. So,
Well,
But
I
it's in our
promise you
ordinance.
that they've operated years here without one, and having one that has no duties is the same as not having one. But I'll bet you, Vicki, that if you search the courtrooms of North Carolina, you won't find a single time where a planning board was ever arrested for not having a secretary.
that's
Well,
very
that's
comforting.
right.
But our ordinance says we're supposed to have one, so if it's okay with you guys, since our ordinance says that, will somebody volunteer, please?
I'll volunteer to do it if I don't have to, like,
You don't have to do
take a
it.
whole bunch of minutes or anything like that.
But see, here's the problem. If you get one, and the board decides that the secretary needs to have a bunch of duties, you now volunteer for a whole bunch of duties that
That's
you
true.
didn't know you were getting.
My commitment to you, Sylvia, is if that happens and you end up with a whole bunch of duties, we'll re-elect.
That sounds fair.
Is that fair?
That sounds fair.
She resigned as secretary.
That's
Not to resign then.
I'm out of here.
Okay, I will nominate Sylvia. Is there a second on that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sylvia is our new secretary. But again, Rhonda does all the heavy lifting, so.
That's good. Duties, I like that.
Okay. Are there any public comments on agenda items? Take that as a no. Approval of minutes from the June 22nd, 2021 regular meeting. I haven't had a chance to review these. Can we postpone these until next month? Does anyone have an objection to that? Okay, so then by agreement, we're going to postpone these to next month? Okay. I think we're down to regular comments. And so I wanted to write up a few little comments that I wanted to share with you guys. from my vast stores of knowledge. Congratulations on your appointment. Regular member terms are for 3 years, and you can serve 2 terms. Alternates are appointed annually with no limit to the number of terms. Pete's a good example of that.
Right.
I think you did 6 terms as an alternate.
I think I did 5 or 6.
The Planning and Zoning Board is established by town ordinances in Chapter 155. By state law, a planning board is required to have, by state law, a planning board is required in order to have zoning. So you have to have a planning board if you want to have zoning. So, and I think we all agree that zoning's a good thing. The board's main area of review is Chapter 157 of our ordinances, land use, and I would encourage you all to become familiar with that. It's Chapter 157. Our guide, if you want to call it that, is the adopted plan, which is also called the land use plan or the comprehensive plan. We just recently updated it. You're probably familiar with them from other municipalities if you haven't seen ours yet, but you should read it and become familiar with it. All the ordinance and changes they require us by law to reference it. Usually we do that with what's called a consistency statement, and I think we had a consistency statement up here. Yep. That's on one of the latest ones. We just have to make sure that we can say that we looked at our adopted plan before we take a vote on something, okay? Because the adopted plan is important. The other thing I wanted to make sure you know is P&Z decisions are advisory only. We are only an advisory board. We make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners who have no obligation to follow them. Our sister board, if you want to call it a sister board, the Board of Adjustment is quasi-judicial, and the BOC can't change their decisions. It's a different game, different board. Recent topics that we've completed, we worked on big houses for, since I joined in 14, it's been an issue, and we pretty much finally finished that up for now a few months ago. Updated the land use plan. We did Chapter 160D update. The state changed all of the building regulation rulings and put it all in a new chapter called 160D, and we recently made all those changes, and really that was Rhonda and Tim did a lot of the work on that.
It's actually land development. 160D covers land development.
And if anybody's interested in any of these topics, like the 160D, I've got a book about a half-inch thick. I'll be glad to share with you. Anybody wants to really get into it. In process is the pools in the front yard setbacks. It's still working its way through. It was discussed and voted on to add a text amendment to the current ordinances. We held a public hearing. There were no comments. We approved a consistency statement. We sent it on to the Board of Commissioners. They voted at their July meeting to hold a public hearing at their August meeting. And if they decide going forward, they can change the ordinance as they see fit. At some point, someone's going to have to work on our rules of procedure. They're horribly outdated and conflict with state law. They conflict with our ordinance. They're kind of a mess. Alternates, John and Mark. The way this works for alternates, you need to attend every meeting and you need to come prepared. You'll alternate being designated as voting members unless we need both of you, and then you'll both be designated. Like today, we would have designated, if we were voting on anything, we would have designated one of you as a voting member. Okay? You participate in all of our deliberations though as a regular member. Both of you you're just like everybody else. You participate completely.
Just can't vote.
Just can't vote. You can vote for selecting a chair, vice chair, and secretary, but you can't vote otherwise unless you're designated. Okay. You can serve on or lead any of our community advisory committees, or CACs, that are sent to the Planning and Zoning Board by the Board of Commissioners. For example, we've had a couple of parking committees and a sewer committee that I can think of off the top of my head. You chaired a parking committee, right, Pete?
Right.
As an alternate.
And I was on both of the parking committees. And, oh, well, I was on the sewer committee.
You want the sewer thing too?
Yeah, I was on the sewer thing.
You want the upgrades?
Right.
So I just wanted to share that with you to make it a little bit clearer, because sometimes it's confusing what goes on. And I also want, under comments, wanted to tell you, our next meeting is August the 24th at 3:30. Does anybody else have any comments? No? If so, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? Tim, do you have anything you want to share?
No, except for the town wants to welcome the new members. We appreciate the fact that you want to serve. Typically, it's for most people, it's a learning process. And it takes a little while to get into it, but it is a learning process. It doesn't sound like you have a whole lot of impact on the town, but in reality, the planning board has more of an impact than probably the commissioners do. While commissioners are not obligated to vote yes or no on anything that you approve or disapprove of, you're the first line where the public gets to hear what we're doing, what we're thinking about doing, and you're usually generating the most information at this level that gets carried on to the Board of Commissioners. So your role is quite a bit more important than most people believe when it comes to being able to shape the town, and I'll give you an example. Vicki gave you one in the big house issue, and we've seen some things there. Another one was the height, when we changed that way we measured height. That went to a self-inflicted subcommittee, but then it came to the board, which was worked on and finalized there. There was some good presentations and some good information that came out of that, and Wade can probably attest to this too. The way that changed the architectural features for the town, you can already see the difference in the structures that are being built now compared to the ones that were being built 12 years ago. It's just completely a different type of house because we now have the latitude to be able to work within that. That was done at the planning level. That didn't even start at the Board of Commissioners. Lots of text message amendments get started down here. The reduction in the pile, where we place piles to bulkheads, that's changed a lot because it allows us now to have structures where we couldn't have structures before, made lots more valuable and increase the size of them and make the design better. So don't think for a minute that what you do here doesn't have a serious impact, because it does.
Why don't you just introduce yourself and
If
you guys know who
If
he
you don't know
is?
who I am, you shouldn't be on that board.
That's why we're here, to try to change some of this stuff.
But I'm Tim Evans, I'm the planning director, or whatever else they give me name. If you come in here in a Board of Commissioners meeting and pull up an agenda, whatever items on there, I have a different title. So we don't really know what I do, but it seems that I'm involved in a lot of stuff. But staff wouldn't be able, we wouldn't be able to operate with minimum staff that we have now without the planning board. I can tell you that. Planning board has done a lot of work, and the subcommittees have done a lot of work that we would not be able to do. So the town moves a little better because of the planning board. But my job here is that I'm in charge of the planning. Me and Rhonda, between the two of us, have, I don't know, it's well over a half a decade of experience in our fields, and we actually overlap, which helps a lot. But I doubt you're gonna find anybody that's more competent than Rhonda on the East Coast. I really
No,
don't.
not half a decade.
Yeah.
Decades, plural.
No. Oh, Rhonda, how old are you? Anyway,
Younger than you,
huh?
younger than you is the most important thing.
You always will be.
Always will be. By a
Anyway.
month.
A month.
She's a whole month younger than I am.
By a month.
That's why her hair is brown, mine's white.
Yeah.
But anyway, the things that we do here are much more vast. If you were in the county inspection department, they just do inspections. Here we do inspections. Up there, they have a code enforcement department. Down here, we do code enforcement. Up there, they have a CAMA department. Down here, we do CAMA. I mean, I could go on and on, but you're looking at I would venture to say that if me and Rhonda was to walk out tomorrow, you'd be hard pressed to replace us with 2 people. Be very hard. But we do a lot, but we're always here. But we do a lot. And we're both completely certified in everything. Everything. I mean, everything. You name it, we're certified in. I think the respiratory therapy, you got that?
I do have CPR.
Yeah, see, I'm talking about. We're certified in everything.
We work around a lot of
Yeah,
people.
I hold the highest levels of certifications you can hold in the state in every field for building inspection. They don't make them any higher. At one time, I was one of over 126 that was active. I think it's less than that now because they can't get building inspectors. I'm a certified planner. I graduated from the Chapel Hill School of Municipal Administration. If you were here at the last meeting, I held the same certification as Christy does that she received the other night. I'm also a certified public manager, which was through NC State. I hold a degree in construction management from NC State. I have a degree in environmental system controls from Central Piedmont Community College. So, I've taught for years and years at Southeastern. I taught for years at Cape Fear. I teach independently now. I teach contractors Con Ed classes, and I teach regular standard courses for inspectors and their Con Ed. And I used to teach vocational stuff at Southeastern as well. So I've been in construction industry my whole life. I've taken just about every course you possibly can. I'm a certified drone pilot. I used my drone this morning over the guy that ran out in the ocean. I kept my drone under so we could have a picture of it when he drowned. Nobody was really trying to help him get out. I think they were hoping he drowned.
Was that the guy at the pier?
Yes.
We're not in the ocean.
He went out in the ocean. I had the drone out, and I was over his head. So I was trying to guide the boats and let him know he weren't going nowhere. I don't know where he thought he was going.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh.
From what I understand from Jeremy, he assaulted a police officer yesterday and got away. And then came back and was laying out over up here. I'm from Ashland, we got no sense to know to run, not to come back.
Escalated the source of crime, huh? Ooh.
Do you need to arrange to give them those big black binders, or do we just not do that?
We don't give anybody ordinances anymore. They have to figure out how to get them on their own. Rhonda, we don't give them.
Heather handles getting them together, and then I'll supply them.
Yeah, we'll give them, probably at the
She'll
next.
get them together, but we do need to try to get the ones back from the ones that have left, because those books,
But
are expensive.
But let's go ahead
The
and clarify
binder.
something.
yeah.
That's not gonna happen. I hate the word ruin that, but that's not gonna happen.
Cause I
We
found them
just
online.
approved the 160D. We have a complete set that actually has a whole bunch of the changes in them.
There's a lot of changes, so if we give them a book, it's not gonna be probably the updated.
But all we need is the binders back. If they want to keep the content, they can.
Yeah,
But we need those binders back so that we can have the binders to put the new stuff that we put together, that the board approved at the meeting before last, which is the 160D.
but she's planning
All
on
of the
getting it
land use
updated
stuff.
Okay.
as soon as the pool thing goes through, getting it completely updated, so we'll all get new updates. We might wait and provide the book then.
I'm not banking on the pool thing going through.
And I don't know, she was gonna wait and
Yeah.
see and then get everything
Well, I got
updated.
one of those, filling things, that took a little while to get, take the pages out, put the pages in,
Oh, yeah.
when we did that.
See, they're
But
still,
I found them online, there was I think I saw.
there he is, and I put them in
It's
my
on the
book
town's
that way,
website.
but,
Yes, I just.
And really, the only parts you need to concentrate on, might be some, I might have changed some of the stuff and put some of the conflict of interest stuff is in the beginning. It's like in section 31 or something, but most of it's after 150. 150
Yeah.
beyond is what you need to concentrate on.
I'll ask Heather
That's
which
the
way
land
she wants to
use.
do it.
And that's another thing we didn't say, and you need to take this to heart. Because some people, I'm not saying any of y'all would be that way, but the stuff that's in that code ordinance book that's regulatory, anything from 154 that's regulatory, the planning board has nothing to do with it. You're not gonna be, that doesn't have to come to you, that don't have to be, now the board might send it to you, but it doesn't have to come to you, it doesn't have to be discussed by you by law. It can be directly done by the board of commissioners. I mean regulatory, there's some stuff in there. There's some stuff in there that should be in the regular, in the land development, it's not, but, you know, stuff like, you know, no parking signs and locations, they're gonna end up probably in land usage, you know what I mean? But stuff like you can't throw a cigarette butt on the dirt, it's gonna end up in the regulatory part, so.
What about getting them, a copy of the land use plan, the adopted one?
I think that's online.
Is that on there?
It's online.
They're all online.
It's
And you-
required to be
and
online.
There's another plan too, that, because Vicki don't work on that, you don't think about it. There's another plan that holds just as much weight and carries a lot more punch to it when it comes to FEMA and that kind of stuff, which is our, hazard mitigation plan. And we do that in conjunction with, it's a regional plan, we work with Pender and Brunswick County. So there's 9 or 10 municipalities that's involved in that. But our hazard mitigation plan has a lot of stuff in it, a lot of stuff.
If you go on the town website and you look under town government, at the very bottom of that drop-down menu, it says ordinances, and if you click that, you can see the ordinances that have been changed since the book came out.
Right.
And you can, they're listed out individually, but then there's a link to where it says ordinances, and it's the ones that are online, and those are searchable, so, that's really all I ever use. I
Right.
never pull that book out.
Yeah, I got the land use plan
And
here.
all that stays up to date.
Yeah,
Well,
that's all up, everything there is up to date. Now, the ordinances, if you're looking for specific, some ordinances that have been approved are online, but they're not in the book. And when you click on ordinances, they'll be the first thing that pops, that you see, is the ones that have not been codified through the book. Codification means nothing. They're approved if they're on the site.
So the ones that are recent are kind of down at the bottom, and the
Yeah.
link takes you to the bulk of them. And then as soon as she updates it, these down here at the bottom, they'll go away, and then the link will be updated.
Now,
Does that make sense?
but I'll go ahead and tell you,
Then we give you inserts to
pretty-
put in your
I'm
book,
pretty-
take the other ones out.
I'm going to tell you, I'm pretty sure I took every one of them that was in that and put it in the 160D, and that's now been approved.
Okay.
So that'll come over. Everyone that had anything to do with land use, I didn't do David's, removal committees and, I mean, they're approving an extra $60,000 for, sand dance or something. That's not anything. Land use stuff I brought.
Budget amendments and stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Those are ordinances as well. The land use stuff, I'm pretty sure, I'll go back and check. But the book you get, I think is gonna be up to date. I think the only thing you won't have is the swimming pool, and that won't change, because I don't think that's gonna pass. I really don't believe it's gonna pass. I don't think it's gonna pass. And I think I know why it won't pass.
You gotta share.
Something we didn't consider.
You want to share that,
Yeah,
or
you
what?
gotta share in that. You
Yeah.
teased us.
Here's what we didn't consider, what I didn't consider. It's very important. We didn't consider the value that they added to the house and the increase in our rent taxes. We didn't take it into consideration. The economic impact it would have. I think that's gonna be the one. It's a good one. It is.
Yeah, we look at $30,000, $40,000. Right in the pool, and then that's just put the pool, and then you got all the else.
And you get taxes. So if you do that number across the island, that's a big number.
Yeah, but
a lot
that's
of
only if
taxes.
people put that many pools on front yard.
They're putting them in, they ain't slowing down.
They can't get them.
No, I know.
Right now, they can't get pools, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but they're
Yeah,
coming.
But they're coming, and they're gonna put them in there, and it's gonna be, we may end up having to settle for, letting them have them, settle for something more robust for security or something.
Well, and I think it's very subtle, but your point about the parking is very important.
Well, I don't know what the importance of the parking is. I don't know how that's important. I really don't. I'm sorry. I don't know how it's important. Parking's not important.
I think you were so subtle, though, with your description at the meeting that a lot of people had just went over, they didn't hear it. They didn't understand what you meant. But I thought about it later, and it's like, dang it, he's right.
I'm always right, because you don't live there.
Well,
Can I ask a question about that, about the parking? if they're, I'm asking for information so I understand. If they were getting the approval to put the pool in the front, wouldn't it have to be,
It would.
that's what I'm gonna ask.
But what she's saying is what was missed is this, is that if you actually apply for a pool and it takes up your required parking spaces, you can't get the pool.
That's what I was
You're not
gonna
gonna
ask.
determine.
The problem is that there's anybody that lives here or comes here is not dumb enough to believe that there ain't 3 or 4 cars parked in that yard that there ain't parking places for. They
True.
fill it up.
True.
And if you put a swimming pool there, that's not gonna change them from coming. You know what I mean? They're gonna show up, same amount of cars they had last year, and now they're gonna take up what available parking that we have. But that doesn't speak, that don't talk,
Right.
because the parking place is gonna fill up anyway. That's why it's not gonna be a big impact. That's why I said, I don't know that it matters, because they either fill up with those cars or they fill up with some other cars. And which will then make me right again when I said, you know, people paying for parking is not gonna solve the parking issue, because we don't have enough parking. Paid parking is not gonna say, but anyway, I'm always right. But that's the point, that's what she's saying, I was too subtle when I.
Gotcha.
Because the truth is that those people will go, they'll bring their cars, and they're gonna park where the available parking is now, which will cause more parking. In my opinion, I don't know that's fact. But at the same time, that don't walk a dog like the millions of dollars that someone can come in here and argue that we are cheating or restricting the town from getting by not allowing pools in the front yard. And they're gonna argue that against the fact that property rights, people have the right to do stuff with their property.
Yeah, but we protect that front setback in so many ways already.
Well, I just think.
So, we're not gonna let them have stairs in the front and stairs in the back, property rights,
Well, they're allowed to encroach 10 feet into
One
one
or
or the
other.
other.
one or the other.
But, yeah, well, but the problem is that.
I'm just saying that, you say property rights, and I agree, and I'm firmly in support of that, but I'm just,
Yeah,
we've got a lot
I
of-
didn't say I agreed, I said that's the argument they're gonna use. Because nobody's guaranteed anything on any piece of property, you're not guaranteed nothing just because you think you can do it, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that they argue it, it's always a good argument, because people don't want, I don't want people telling me what I can do, and you don't want people doing what you can do. So when people say they don't want people telling them what to do, it's just about, there's no one that's not gonna disagree with that. You know, it's a good argument, always. And real estate people gonna show up, they make more money when there's a pool.
I'll tell you right now, every oceanfront house there is for sale right now, people are looking at them based on whether or not they can get a pool either in the ocean side or that street side.
That's
Right.
true.
If they can get one, they're buying them now.
Well, and that's the other
They're buying
thing too.
everything they can get.
Yeah, and the other thing too is what he just said is very important. What's more important is that it also adds to the rental income.
It does.
And to the B Park money fund.
30%
So
more.
there was an economic factor there that I never considered that has been brought to my attention by about 30 people. 30 people, I bet. I've gotten all kinds of hammered, seriously. And I can't argue it, because I used the same argument against the inlet agitator,
yeah, and you lost.
and I lost. I used the same argument well, we don't know I lost yet. We don't know if I lost yet.
me, baby, you lost.
I'm still hanging on with my fingernails.
That's so done.
Well, I didn't lose.
Stick a fork in
Listen,
it.
hey, let's get something clear here. I didn't lose. I don't own the property over here. I didn't lose shit. I didn't lose. But I gave it a good fight. I gave it the best. I was still fighting right up to the last minute. I'm still fighting. But I still think the town should get a lawyer. I still think the town should sue. Because that science ain't worth 5 cents and ain't gonna hold up in any court.
Well, I agree with you, and you want to talk about fiscal impact. That will have a much greater physical impact on our beach than pools in the front yard ever
Well,
will.
what's so bad about it is that they don't have one single rule that they have, their rules would allow for structures out there to be completely damaged and destroyed, when our rules don't allow for it. But yet, they're stigmatizing the property.
Do you guys know what we're talking about?
No, I don't.
Inlet hazard area on the ends of the island. the CRC controls that, and they have decided in their great wisdom, they came up with this new science on how to determine where an inlet hazard area should be. And the new one on the west end of our beach stops at, basically Swordfish, right?
Right.
The end of end of the fish streets.
Okay.
Everything west of there would then, on the ocean front, and if you look, I've looked at their map online, you can zoom in on it. Not sure that it doesn't cross into some of the second row homes too, but everything on the ocean front is also, will be in an inlet hazard area. So a lot of homes were added.
Goes all the way down, all the way down to 1,000 block. They moved it a long way.
A long way.
But the science, when she talks about science, yeah, it brings me to, and I said it in front of that committee up there. I've said it here. I said it to the land representative here. That ain't science.
I agree, it's terrible.
It's not even magic, because when you think of magic, you know, that has a tendency to make you smile and think of something fun.
Right.
That shit's more like voodoo.
It's like,
Voodoo.
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's voodoo.
There's
It's just
no-
voodoo.
It's called inlet hazard area method, IHAM. And it's based on, basically on change. And it's looking at the change in the measurements on the beaches. Where they're moving to. And it doesn't matter to them whether it's positive gain or a negative gain. It's erosion or accretion.
Just
Um,
the change.
Just change. So all of those lots down there have accreted. So they have change. They have great change, so then they are, they'll now be moved into the inlet hazard area.
Yeah, but it goes far deeper
Oh,
than that.
yeah, they were saying that in the
There's
third.
no science there, there's no science there at all. They didn't use the same science for us that they used for for Ocean Isle. And just to show you how cool their science is, no matter how much sand you have that lands on your beach, you still are stuck with an erosion rate of -2. So if you're growing, you still get an erosion, yeah, that's not science.
Right.
And under any circumstances, but yet they'll stand by that science. That ain't science.
Well,
That's
what I
voodoo.
read was they were saying that back in the 30s or 40s, that we, on the west end, the inlet actually shrunk.
No,
Since
yeah,
then,
that's
actually
exactly what they said, but then they said they didn't go back more than 30 years. Because the reason they did that was because this is the second time they brought it around, and I did win the first time. The first time they used those pictures, see, they were reluctant to say they used those pictures. Because I walked in there and said, I don't know what science y'all use. But if you go back to the beginning of time and took pictures, if your science don't put the inlet hazard area right out, or the inlet, the center of the inlet right where it is right now, I won't see that map. Because you cannot change the law of averages. If over 1 million years it's come and gone and it ends up right where it is right now, that's where it's at.
That's where it's at.
So they were reluctant, but they couldn't even argue with that common sense. They just killed it. They just killed it right there. I said, because I promise you, that doesn't work. You can't use pictures, because if you gotta go all the way back to the beginning of time. You just can't do that. And they did the same thing again. Hold it, they did the same thing again. They've now extended it. That time, they put it way out there where, so if you've got 1 million pictures and it puts it right here, you had the inlet hazard right here. They wanted to extend it way over there. How did you get to that? And what picture put you like that? Do you know what I'm saying? In other words, well, they've done it again. They've done the same thing again. But they were reluctant to say. But they keep talking about the pictures from the 50s, but they said they only went back 30 years. But that ain't the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the 5-year review.
Yep.
And that's what I argued last time. I can tell you but they have 15 inlets that they didn't even investigate. But they're gonna use the erosion rates, whether they're minus or negative there.
But Tim, the most important thing
But ours,
is
they're not.
figure out that whenever they decide the 5-year period is gonna start, 5 years later, if we put
I
this.
told them when it was started. I told them. I said, y'all set these maps, you had to change these maps. That's when your 5 years started. I said, but I want to know what the review process is and what the outcome of the review is. And that's exactly what I said. Because this looks like voodoo, just like the science.
Right, or why
Every time
didn't
we
we,
ask a serious question, you tell us it's a 5-year review. Well, tell me what happens when it don't move.
or it has improved, why can't we go back 5 years and see what the trend is? But if we put sand out there as we continue to nourish our beach and it continues to migrate to the west, 5 years from now, are we gonna go
Well-
from the fish streets to the pier?
We can,
What are we gonna do?
we can argue this all we want.
Well,
But the only way that's ever gonna change, I promise you that if you went and got an attorney to do an injunction somewhere with a judge, until that science could be reviewed, you'd never see it again. Because, just like I said in here, the very first one that was done, they did an extensive study with real scientists. And you know, the very first paragraph said that in order to do this properly, you have to apply common sense.
there you go.
I
That's
remember
insurance
reading
supply.
that.
Very
My common
first
sense
part of
does,
that
isn't it?
original
Yep,
one,
yep.
I read the whole entire time, that first time. Anyway,
He didn't
so,
wanna join us.
but the inland hazard area is a stigmatism that really should be, especially off those people in the 1,000 block. There is never gonna be any effect there.
Well, you know, what I saw is that the inland hazard area comes around, they moved it, but where it stops, the ocean hazard area starts.
Well, and what's bad is,
We're all bad though.
what? Yeah.
OHA, we're all bad.
Right, so,
Well, here's what's so bad about it is, under certain circumstances, because of the inland hazard area, you could literally be neighbors, right? And,
Yeah.
and the neighbor in the inlet hazard area may have a whole bunch of land and be restricted to less buildable property than, and that was brought up too. See, it's happening on other islands. The ocean hazard area should be the most restricted.
right,
But because of that, you could end up with living, where it's, you could be down 1,000 block to one of them houses where the ocean is out there at 300, I mean, the last line of stable vegetation out there, 250 feet. And right next to you, you know what I mean?
yeah.
That person can have a much bigger house than you can have twice the lot.
Sounds fair.
It is fair. But like you said, not everybody gets property rights. We don't get to vote on that here, we vote on the pools, I guess. But I still think the town should, that's my advice, and I don't know anybody listening to me. But I think the only way you can stop that is with an attorney, because I think that's the only thing we have to pay attention to. Because if we expose the hypocrisy, they just change rules to change it. There's no need to change that. We ain't lost a single house, a single piece of property. Now, we would have if we'd have built to their standards, said the town. No need to change it. And that was the other thing I argued too last time. They were supposed to look at it to see if it needed to be changed. Instead, they looked at it and changed it. There's a difference in it.
Yeah, big difference.
Wow, those people need jobs.
That's exactly what it is. Making new jobs. Of course, I wrote several letters to the state and everybody said we should do whatever we can. Just do whatever we can. Not necessary. You take the whole rule book, you know what I mean? Tell every town they have their drop, it's not there. Just do whatever you can. Or you put it in the building code like they did all the famous stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do whatever you can. Do it. I don't even know what it's for. What is it for? What's the camera for, Rob? You get the camera on. What is it for?
Protect your environment,
What?
your wetlands.
Check your weapon.
It's just to protect the environment. Regulations to protect the environment.
What have they done to protect it?
There's people who don't care about the birds and stuff.
I know.
I care about the birds, but I don't know what camera's done to protect it. What have camera done to protect it? Every time a storm comes, the dune washes away.
Ask Wade.
I ain't seen my own show, so you know.
I don't like camera.
Okay, but tell me, what do you truly think don't you think you do more to protect the environment when you put a bulkhead in than they do when they issue you a permit? Wouldn't you have to get a permit from a building, wouldn't you have to get a building permit to put that
Tim,
bulkhead
yeah.
in?
You
Whether the
do.
camera's in the way or not?
You do.
Wouldn't you have to put it into the building code?
You do.
So which is protecting the environment, the bulkhead or camera? I want to know what they do to protect
not a
anything.
fan.
You don't have to
Camera at all.
answer that question.
No, you're putting him on the spot
Don't
here.
answer that
No.
question, just like I'm
We already
not.
know.
I'll
those
ask
all
you,
the time.
then
Just
I'll
like
ask
I'm
you
not,
this, Vic.
Wade.
I'll ask you this, Vic. I'll tell you this, you tell me who's doing more to protect the environment. This is land use stuff. Rhonda, when somebody comes here to build a house, do you issue the camera permit or do they issue it in Wilmington?
If it's on the land, I issue it.
Okay, so the house, you issue the permit for, right?
Mhm.
Okay? whenever they get a bulkhead, to build a bulkhead, who issues the permit, you or what?
It's on the canal, Wilmington does. If it's on
Okay,
Second
all right,
Row, I
hold on.
do.
So, hold on a second. So, there's the example right here. This is the best example they got for protecting the environment, the water, the waterways, and the birds, and all this stuff, right? So, the town is issuing the permit. The town doesn't allow but what? Does CAMA have a minimum requirement, not
It's-
setback?
it-
No? Do they have a minimum requirement for any kind of stormwater? Or is that the town?
Yeah,
That's
they
the
do.
ta-
No, they do.
All right, what is theirs?
Ours is more restrictive.
Okay? Like I said, so what are they doing to
Ours
protect?
is more restrictive.
All right, hold on. So the house is 2,000, got a footprint of 2,000 square feet, right? Water shedding off of it. Our rules require you to put it in the ground. Their rules do not require you to put it in the ground. So it could just run right off the top of the house.
Now, some of your new subdivisions do.
Now, that's different. We
Some of
know
your new
what-
subdivisions have different
Now, and
requirements.
that's because that's part of the.
Through water
stormwater plan.
quality,
That's what
right.
they agreed to.
Right.
It's not a CAMA requirement.
It's a water quality.
Yeah, water quality, not a CAMA. So anyway, the water runs right off your house, it can run off your house along the ground. 2,000 square foot, right? That has a bigger impact than a bulkhead that's built on the canal. Here's why. The bulkhead that was built on the canal, when it's built, it stops the water, right? Stops the erosion. The building code says that when you build it, you gotta build it to this standard. There is no standard in CAMA. It's just a bulkhead. They issue your permit, they issue the bulkhead, right? So, this one is stopping any damage. This one is creating damage. Did I not just say that? So the one that's actually creating the biggest impact, you can get here. But the one that's creating no impact when it's built, you get there. There is no impact from that bulkhead, it's only positive, not negative. No way possible. So the rules make no sense. None, they don't make any sense.
Well, to me, it's not so much the CAMA.
She's gonna
It's
defend it
the-
because it's her job, so, you know.
Who? I have a
But to me-
full-time job without
but to me-
CAMA. I have a
but to
full-time
me-
job
but to me-
zoning.
Some of this stuff don't make any sense.
Well, and I think it's the CRC and how they administer that law that's an issue.
Well, I think what they did was they were supposed to be an environmental agency that oversaw environmental stuff, and the best thing they had going for them was land use plans, okay? And that's what they were there to make sure that towns had an attitude and a responsibility. And then they became a regulatory agency that had no authority outside of issuing permission. They only give permission. They don't issue permits, they're not allowed to issue permits, they don't have any standards. They only give permission. And so really, they're not having any impact on the environment. They just give permission. They don't issue permits. They don't issue a single solitary permit at all. When they issue the CAMA permit, can you build that bulkhead? Does that give you permission to build that bulkhead?
No, it tells you under you can't.
That's right.
It tells you cannot do
When
anything.
when she gives a CAMA permit for a house, right?
It says
They
this is
can't
not a
start
permit
building.
to build.
Yeah, they know, they
You
only
meet all your
have the
local,
right to
state,
issue
and
permission.
federal regulations, which means get a building permit.
That's right. But, and you can't issue a building permit until it meets all state rules and regulations. But you can't do anything, no land development without that permit. They're just giving permission, and that's what I'm saying. They went from being an advisory environmental agency who was supposed to oversee the environment and make sure that bad things didn't happen in the 70s, like turning trees into paper bags. They were one of those kinds of agencies. And now, from a committee, they were formed, and over time, they write rules. And they write some of the craziest rules you've ever seen. They got some going on right now that are just crazy. They don't impact us that much, but they do impact other people a lot. But I still think that they do very little. I don't know what I just can't. I've been watching it now for 25 years. I just don't see what they do. The town, and I give you the very best, I can say this all day long, but I'm gonna give you the best example I can. The inlet hazard area, the west end. Town has its own frontal dune designation, it's had it since they had an ordinance book. It's 400 feet, 450 feet from where CAMA would allow you to build. If it weren't for the town of Holden Beach, there'd be houses on the other side of that splash down there on the west end. if it weren't for the town of Holden Beach, there would be houses between that frontal dune that is designated now, almost on the ocean out there in the 1200.
Hey, I believe you, because there's an island that's just right next door that has some of those very same issues, and that's why they have such an erosion problem.
Well, the last storm, there's a house not far from us, but the last storm, they had like $41 million worth of damage.
It's bad down there.
I think we, huh?
It's pretty bad down there. I went down there about 2 or 3 months ago for the first time. It's crazy what happened to them down there.
They have no dunes on the.
They say the sand's washed on the streets. They're still trying to dig the streets out.
That could happen here, though. We get a breach in there around.
It has
400
happened
miles.
here.
Oh, yeah, I
I've
know.
seen it, so,
Yeah. Well, it could happen again. It could happen here. I just hope it don't happen next year now.
Is that it?
Floyd was bad.
I tell you right now, if it happens this fall, I'll be right there. Yeah, make it, no, I'm gonna sit there and keep talking.
Yeah, make a
I'll make a
motion.
motion to
Pete,
adjourn.
make a motion.
You get it?